What? Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.
What is going on, guys? It's week 4 cashing points. Jake Tribbey here with Graham Barfield and Ryan Heath to discuss every angle of the week 4 DFS slate. Got a nice 11-game slate here. We're going to kick it off with the Los Angeles Chargers at the New York Giants. Chargers are 6-point favorites here. Total is 43.5. On the injury front, no Will Dissly for the Chargers. On the Giants side, no Tyrone Tracy. And of course, Russell Wilson has now been benched for Jackson Dart. Graham, let's start with the Giants side. I think they're a little bit more straightforward. Jackson Dart, just 4,500 here. We don't quite know what to expect, but I mean, Dart was Brett Whitefield's QB1 in the 2025 draft class. So I do think there's certainly some upside here. And, you know, obviously Russell Wilson had his fair share of struggles. So do you think Dart can inject some life into this Giants offense? Do you think he's a worthy DFS play here at a very, very cheap price tag?
Yeah, 4,500 for Dart. I think he's definitely in play. Question the upside. It's a rookie making his first start, but I think his floor is actually probably a little better than some projection models think. I think he's going to be a much better scrambler, second reaction quarterback than Russell Wilson was here at this late stage of his career. You go back and look, I mean, Dart averaged at least 30 yards per game in each of his last 3 seasons at Ole Miss. He also had double-digit touchdowns on the ground. And like you said, yeah, Brett loved him coming out. He thought, you know, I asked him for like a ceiling comp, and he was like, bro, he's like Baker Mayfield. And, you know, more mobile, slightly more mobile Baker Mayfield is pretty interesting. But again, rookie making their first start against Harbaugh. I do question the ceiling, but I think this offense will be a little more functional. That's kind of the key to this game. Keep this game close, keep Herbert's foot on the pedal, keep the Chargers, you know, remaining pass heavy. I like Dart a little bit. I really kind of just want to play Cam Scatterbo, though. This is Scott's boy. He's going to play like 85% of the snaps in this game with no Tyrone Tracy for the next couple weeks. 5,500 Jake is a really nice price for him. And I mean, he's going to be popular, but you think he's going to be like mega chalk?
I don't think so. I think we're going to see pretty flat running back ownership after McCaffrey. I also think you'll see Jonathan Taylor come up a bit in ownership projections across the industry. My one problem with Scatterbo is that I'm not sure Dart's going to check down quite at the level of Russell Wilson. Ryan, certainly curious on your thoughts on Scatterbo. The other note with Dart, and like Graham noted, very mobile. I thought this was a great note from Scott Barrett. Dart averaged more rushing yards per game in college than Drake May did in his final year. And obviously we're all excited to play Drake May with the rushing upside. I do also wonder, Ryan, if that maybe takes a little bit away from Cam Scatterbo. What do you think about a 5,500 rookie running back who's looking at a bell cow workload with no Tyrone Tracy?
Yeah, I think there's a good chance it does take away from him. The Chargers have been giving up a lot of rushing to QBs this year so far. I mean, Pat Mahomes went for 57 yards and a TD on the ground. Bo Nix and Geno Smith had their highest rushing yardage totals of the season against the Chargers. So yeah, I'd expect a lot of running for Dart. I think Scatterbo is fine, but I don't know. Both of these teams have been so pass heavy on offense, have been extreme pass funnels as their defense. To me, there are just better running back plays. Like I'm a little bit scared to play Scatterbo as such a big underdog with behind an offensive line that hasn't generated much room for him. He's great after contact, would not take that away from him. He's exciting to watch, but yeah, I don't know. These cheap running backs, both of them in this game scare me a little bit for similar reasons. Both Scatterbo and Hampton at 5,900 on the other side, just because, yeah, neither of these offensive lines have generated many yards before contact. Both of their offensive coordinators seem to know it. So yeah, I kind of want to lean more into the passing games here if I can.
Yeah, I certainly think that's reasonable. You know, worth noting, last week we had some really strong running back chalk in Jordan Mason and Ken Walker. I don't think, you know, the cheap guys this week that are going to be popular, Hampton, Scatterbo, are nearly as strong as the running back chalk that we saw last week. A little bit more fragile in that regard. Wrapping up the Giants side, you know, I think if I'm playing Dart, I'm playing Malik Neighbors on
Yep.
every single Dart team. I think he can work a little bit of Wandale in there, but Neighbors is the guy I want. 7K is a really, really nice price for Malik Neighbors. And, you know, if I was Jackson Dart, I would certainly force feed Malik Neighbors in this one. Ryan, let's talk Chargers side of this game, which I think probably has a little bit more juice overall. Justin Herbert is arguably the front runner for MVP right now. He's rushing more. He also leads the NFL in passing yards per game. My question is, who do we stack him with? Because, interestingly, I don't think anybody quite expected this. It's been very flat among, the big three Chargers wide receivers and Keenan Allen, Quentin Johnston, and Ladd McConkey.
It has been, yeah. And they've slightly priced Quentin Johnston and Keenan Allen up. So it's not like super obvious to me that any of the three just project as like by far the best value. But a couple interesting notes here. The Giants playing a lot more man coverage this year. That is supposed to be good for Ladd McConkey, per his targets per out run against man, his average separation score against man, both just elite numbers. So I really like Ladd here, paying up a little bit, probably going to be the least popular of the three. We saw what he did in his rookie season. He's still really good at football. I just would expect some of the actual fantasy results to swing back his way eventually. Giants also very easy to beat deep, 5th most receiving yards per game allowed on the 20+ yard downfield throws. Should mostly be a Quentin Johnston note there. He is by far the highest ADOT on the team. So Ladd and QJ are my two favorites, but I'm not excluding Keenan Allen from my Herbert stacks by any means. Those are just going to be my leans here.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you. Ladd McConkey kind of feels like a buy low at this spot, 6, 7, 8% ownership across the industry. Definitely feels pretty nice. Graham, curious if you had any other thoughts on Chargers or specifically Omari and Hampton. I think between the two rookie running backs in this game, Hampton is pretty clearly my preference. I just think the Chargers have a better chance to put points on the board. Oh, yeah. Also, it is so thin behind him. Hassan Haskins, Kamani Vidal, these are not guys that you want to give serious reps. Any thoughts on Hampton? Any other thoughts on the Chargers?
So I actually have a different take. I feel a little more confident than Hampton chalk this week than I did Kim Walker chalk last week. We love Jordan Mason. Okay. But I think this is an awesome spot, man. 5,900 for a guy who's not going to come off the field. It's a great matchup too. New York is just getting absolutely destroyed on gap blocking concepts, giving up nearly 7 yards per carry, 68% success rate according to our fantasy points data. Both are second worst on gap blocking concepts. And yeah, man, that's all the Chargers are using Hampton on right now. That's his go-to is kind of give this guy a clear lane, point and shoot, let him go, define it for him, and he'll be good to go. The Chargers could debacle the Giants in this spot, absolutely destroy them. And I think that's more my concern with Scadaboo is he just ends up having to be this kind of check down, dump off guy. And that's my one concern is the Giants just, it's a rookie making his first start against a really good coaching staff. So I like Hampton quite a bit. I'm not as bullish as I was on Jordan Mason last week, but it's pretty close. I think he's a really good play.
Yeah, good call on the matchup there being very, very strong for Hampton. Also, will likely have positive game script in his favor. Let's move on to the Cleveland Browns at the Detroit Lions. Browns are 10-point underdogs here. Total is 44.5. This is also one of the only clean games from an injury perspective. Pretty injury riddled slate this week. Graham, very easy to love the Lions here. We were sort of talking in our projections meeting earlier today about how this is kind of a similar spot to what we saw in week 2, where, massive Lions implied team total, guys like Gibbs and Amon-Ra and Laporta are going to pick up a little bit of ownership, but it doesn't seem like people really want to play Goff or lean into the team stack. And obviously Goff has just crushed these spots as a home favorite, huge implied total. So yeah, what do you think of Goff? What do you think of the Lions side of this game? Because there's definitely some massive scoring upside here.
Yeah, Goff at home as a favorite has just been a cash register for 4 years now, 5 years. Goff is averaging 20.2 fantasy points per game as a home favorite. It's QB6, QB7 worthy. It's not as good of a spot as week 2 was against the Bears. I think Scott, that was the week Scott filled in for me, and he was giving out Goff doubles. And that was an awesome call. It ended up being the nuts that week, along with Russell Wilson against the Cowboys. It's just, those two defenses, Bears, Cowboys, are so bad. Yeah, Myles Garrett's awesome, but this back end of the secondary has kind of been a little leaky. They gave up 7.8 yards per pass attempt to Lamar Jackson 2 weeks ago. They gave up 7.3 to Jordan Love last week. It's just like Myles Garrett is a man possessed. That's like the only thing the Browns defense has going for them in terms of their pass defense. I think the one thing I like about Goff this week, more so than like usual, is the Browns have an awesome run defense. Like I don't know how much it matters this week, but right now they have the best run defense in the NFL by basically every single metric that matters. And yeah, man, I mean, I think you can make a case that Amon-Ra's too cheap. I'll let Ryan make his case for Sam Laporta. He's got some great Laporta notes at 4,400. JMO at 5,900 is overpriced, but bro, he's gonna be like 2% owned. Like that's when we play JMO, is when no one is on him, because he could absolutely wreck the slate. He's more expensive than Drake London, more expensive than Quentin Johnston, more expensive than Keenan Allen. He's like basically the same price as Devontae Adams, just 300 separating them. It's a terrible price. Like, don't get me wrong, but he definitely has slate flipping upside, and I don't think anybody's going to play him.
Yeah, I think, working, like I said, a lot of people are going to want to play Amon-Ra, Gibbs, a little bit of Laporta, but I think, obviously stacking them with Goff is one way to bring down the ownership, or just adding Jameson Williams to those stacks is another really good way to bring down the ownership there. Ryan, curious if you have any other notes on the Lions side of this game, because I'm sure we can breeze through the Browns side here.
Yeah, I just really want to give Sam Laporta his due here. It's one of the best schematic matchups on the slate. The Browns' top 3 in man coverage rate. Laporta has always crushed man over his entire career. Since the start of last year, he ranks 3rd in the NFL in fantasy points per route run against man coverage, behind only A.J. Brown and Puka Nacua, which is kind of absurd to me. So yeah, just at 4,400, he has better anytime touchdown odds than most other tight ends that are in his price range. With the schematic note, I like him kind of as a one-off. And yeah, of course, in like these Lions onslaught lineups where you just go Goff, Laporta, Gibbs, Amon-Ra, it feels very, very strong to me. So yeah, really like that angle. Yeah, that's pretty much all for the Lions. For me, the only guy I have much interest with the Browns is Jerry Jeudy. Has a slightly favorable schematic matchup with the Lions playing a little bit more single high. Also, sounds like they are benching Terrion Arnold, moving their slot corner outside. We've gotten just like some positive vibes from the Browns about wanting to feed Jeudy this week as well. So I think he's pretty solid as the bring back at 4,900. But there's nobody else on the Browns that I have much interest in. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, I mean, Quinshon Judkins, maybe, just because the workload was so strong last week. It's just tough to argue for a running back on a team with an implied total as low as the Browns, right around 16, 17 points. Only other note that I wanted to throw out for this one is I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be a pretty underrated play this week. We'll see where his ownership comes in at. I'm expecting, 12, 13%, probably not too much more than that. Gibbs, 18.7 expected fantasy points per game. Like he has a workload where we would have been so excited to play him in this spot last year. Obviously the rushing matchup isn't great, but I know, Ryan, one of your notes was that the Browns are a bit of an underneath funnel, and they get pressure quite quick, which should force a few more, targets, passing reps toward Jahmyr Gibbs. I think he's a really solid guy to work into Lions lineups. Honestly, the only Lions starter that I'm not really interested in this week is David Montgomery, because he won't, benefit from that pass game work. All right. I think we covered this one. If you're playing like the Millie Maker, this is something, Scott Barrett brought up during our projections meeting. Maybe you could argue for a 3,100 Isaiah Bond. I think there's a much better 3,100 wide receiver on this slate. But let's move on to the Philadelphia Eagles at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Eagles are 3.5-point favorites. Total here is 44.5. On the injury front, Will Shipley is back for the Eagles. I don't expect that to make a huge difference, but he might steal some pass down work. On the Tampa Bay side, Mike Evans is out with a hamstring issue. Chris Godwin is questionable, as is Baker Mayfield and Tristan Wirfs. For what it's worth, market really does seem to expect Baker to play here. Line hasn't moved much after he was listed questionable. Got a series of limited practices in this week. Graham, I have some interest in a low-ish own, probably right around 10%, Saquon Barkley. This doesn't really feel like a great game to stack, but, like always with the Eagles, they have explosive playmakers in A.J. Brown, in Saquon Barkley. And we saw Saquon just break so many slates last year. There's just no way he can maintain the level of inefficiency that he's at. I tweeted a running back missed tackles force versus yards after contact per touch chart. Saquon was, in the worst corner of the chart, the bottom left, averaging just 3.3 yards per carry. It's been rough. It's been rough for Saquon, but I still think the explosiveness is there. I still think the upside is there. Do you have any interest in Saquon? Maybe A.J. Brown on the Eagles side?
Yeah, I always have interest in Saquon. Last week, another kind of slow-ish week. Lane Johnson did get hurt in that game. He picked up a neck injury. He's going to be back in this spot. I just don't know if this is the bounce back spot, though. Like, Tampa has been so good against the run, allowing the third fewest yards per carry. But like you mentioned, the role for Barkley is even better this year. He's RB2 in snaps, RB5 in target share, RB5 in expected fantasy points. So, yeah, you could make a really strong bull case for him just based on the volume. But kind of like you said, I came into this week thinking this game was a little low on the total, and I started kind of digging into it deeper. I think it's just about right. 44.5 total, when you see that with two pretty good offenses, kind of catches your eye. The Eagles are just playing so slow, though, man. Like, they're so slow and so run heavy. And we saw last week the only way they're really going to pick up their pace and pass more is if they get pushed. So that's like kind of like what we were saying last week with that Rams matchup. It's like, yeah, they could definitely get pushed, in which case A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith are great plays. I think you could kind of make a similar case here with the Bucs, but man, it's tough, to be honest with you, especially at these prices. I think A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, they're just fairly priced. You're not really getting any sort of technical value on either of them.
Yeah, at least on the main slate, I have a harder time arguing for game stacks here. Ryan, I'm curious what you think. On the Bucs side, Emeka Egbuka has been priced up to 6,800, but also no Mike Evans. We might not get Chris Godwin, and even if we do, I'd be pretty surprised if he was out there for more than, say, 50-60% of routes would be quite a bit for given the injury he's coming off of. What do you think of the Bucs side, this game in general?
Yeah, the Eagles have shut down the slot just by schedule adjusted fantasy points per game allowed more than any other team this season. It's kind of absurd. There's been very little slot production against the Eagles this year. So yeah, I just have zero interest in a 6K Chris Godwin. Egbuka, if he wasn't 6,800, again, I could see it, but it's just too expensive for me on this slate when there are just other spots I'd rather go to. He could also get a Quinion Mitchell shadow, which Devontae Adams saw last week. That limited him to just 2 catches for 12 yards when Mitchell was in primary coverage. So yeah, I just cannot get that into this Buccaneers passing game. My favorite way to play this game is just via Saquon Barkley, just because the Buccaneers have always been an underneath funnel. It's because of all the blitzing they do. It just leaves the middle of the field open. So yeah, Barkley, even if he doesn't get there in the run game with that better receiving game role that Graham was talking about, I think that could be an angle where he just gets peppered with some low ADOT targets and gets there in that way. But yeah, the rest of this game, I just can't talk myself into much. You've got Sterling Shepard at 4K, but there are probably 3 or 4 other 4K guys on the slate I like more. Shepard's never gone over 12 DK with the Buccaneers, despite a lot of games where he's been at a 65-70% route share. So I don't think Godwin being banged up or anything like that even really helps him that much or increases his ceiling. And last is just Bucky Irving, where really good player, efficient player, career high in touches last week. He's taken over this backfield by XFP, but only Ashton Genty has gotten hit more behind the line of scrimmage than Irving has this season. Maybe getting Wirfs back helps a little bit, but they have 2 other linemen that will still be out. So yeah, it just kind of rough to me all around. And I really just want to take these one-off shots on Saquon.
Yeah, some one-off shots on Saquon. You could maybe argue for like a mini stack of Igbuka and Saquon, maybe like a Bucky Irving, AJ Brown, something like that. But I just have a really hard time stacking this game unless, I'm playing 1 p.m. only. All right, we can move it along to the New Orleans Saints at the Buffalo Bills. Saints are 15.5-point underdogs, biggest spread we've seen this season. Total is 47.5. This is another fairly clean game from an injury perspective. Bills will be without a couple key defenders in Matt Milano and Ed Oliver on the defensive side of the ball. Ryan, we can start with the Saints because they're just a very straightforward team. The pace is awesome. They're running plays very, very fast, fastest pace team in the league pretty much. And they're very, very concentrated. So that makes it an extremely easy offense to target. Chris Olave leads all wide receivers in expected fantasy points per game. Juwan Johnson ranks second among tight ends in expected and actual fantasy points per game. Both of these guys feel like fairly easy clicks. Maybe you could question the upside because this Saints implied total is disastrous and, Spencer Rattler's throwing them the ball, but we can certainly hang our hat on the volume relative to the price, right, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, you put it pretty much perfectly there. Olave, leading all wide receivers in XFP. Johnson second among tight ends. They're just too cheap for their volume. Agreed on the touchdown upside. Juwan has like one of the worst anytime touchdown lines of any tight end in this range, like the opposite of Sam Laporta. But if there's not going to be ownership on Juwan, then I'm going to play him. I'm going to continue to until he's priced correctly. Olave is just really solid on a slate that kind of lacks a lot of 5K-ish wide receiver value. So wouldn't be surprised to see the ownership. I see him catch a lot, but I'm also kind of okay with it.
Yeah. I'm always a little surprised to see, week after week, we've seen these awesome workloads for Juwan. He's always been a target earner, and we know he's going to be out there now. The ownership is just not really matching it. I think there are a lot of really strong tight end options, so it does make a bit more sense to me this week that Juwan isn't catching a ton of ownership, but I will likely be over the 6 to 8.5% that I'm seeing projected across the industry. Graham, really curious on your thoughts on the Bills side of this game. It seems like most DFS players, at least based on current ownership projections, have caught up to the idea that we want to play James Cook in these huge double-digit spread games. I also have a little bit of interest in Josh Allen. Granted, we might end up seeing some Mitch Trubisky here if you believe the spread. Curious on your thoughts on the Bills side of this game.
Yeah, Cook is an awesome play. I don't really know if we need to spend a whole lot of time. He's probably a little underpriced too. I think he'll probably end up being like a 7,500, 7,700 back on DraftKings by midseason. The rolls just come way up, 33% increase year over year by XFP. The one angle I really wanted to talk about in this game is it's Josh Allen. Like, he is by far and away the best quarterback play on this slate by projections, at least by, point and a half, I think, over Lamar. And he's not going to catch much ownership at all, it seems. Like, our ownership projections have him at, let's see, Darren's got him, I think, 5%, 6% when I saw it last. Yeah, 6%. I think he's a really, really great tournament play because, like, the Saints have some of the worst perimeter corners in the league. The problem, though, is like Keon Coleman. Like, I really want to play some Keon Coleman in this spot because, Coleman's been lead target by a slight margin on this team over Kincaid. Coleman has 18 targets. Kincaid has 16. Just a really strong upside spot. Saints giving up 2.6 yards per route run to perimeter receivers, but he's 5,600. Like, it's definitely overpriced. It's kind of the Jameson Williams corollary where you're like paying up a little bit at receiver to get Contrarian. That would be pretty easily my favorite stacking partner with Josh Allen. I see some underrated upside with Coleman this week. And then, yeah, man, I just want to play Juwan Johnson. Like, I think he's the best tight end play on the slate again. Like, only Jake Ferguson has more targets among tight ends. Only Trey McBride has a higher first read target share among tight ends. And yeah, the touchdown upside isn't good, but like on DK, we're just like banking those 8, 9, 10, 11 targets and just taking them to the bank. So, yeah, I really like Allen a lot, especially if he's only going to be like 5 or 6%, he's an awesome play.
Yeah, I think both Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson are pretty interesting on this slate. You're going to see most quarterback ownership really revolve around those like mid 5K values. And that will get you to a very, very different build if you end up getting to a Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. I'd also consider Dalton Kincaid a fine stacking partner with Josh Allen. I'm not bending over backwards to play him, but he actually is our best projected point per dollar value as Josh Allen stacking partners go at the moment. But Bill's implied team total is just absolutely massive this week. So certainly don't want to ignore Josh Allen. Got this game covered. Let's move it on to the Washington Commanders at the Atlanta Falcons. Washington 1.5 underdogs here. Total is 44.5. On the Washington side, they are underdogs because no Jaden Daniels this week. Terry McLaurin, Noah Brown, and John Bates also all out. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt is questionable, and no A.J. Terrell on the Atlanta side of this game. Ryan, Marcus Mariota shaping up as a pretty strong play again this week. He's only 5K. We've seen, I think, a lot of the best performances of his career in this Cliff Kingsbury Washington offense. How much interest do you have in Mariota? I think this is an easier week to play him in some regards than last week because this offense is going to be even more condensed with no McLaurin, no Noah Brown, no John Bates. It's pretty much just Zach Ertz and Deebo Samuel if you are stacking up Marcus Mariota.
Yeah, Mariota's definitely in play. Leads all quarterbacks in fantasy points per dropback since the start of last season. That's pretty tough to argue with at 5K. I just have like a lot of, you could call them nitpicks, or like, I think they're legitimate worries about this game environment though, and how the Commanders kind of match up into the Falcons. So the Falcons have a pass rush suddenly for the first time in God knows how many years. Top 10 pressure rate on the season so far. For perspective, Mariota was only pressured on 17% of his dropbacks last week. Falcons have been at 43% this season. So I'm a little concerned that things just won't come as easily, especially with Terry McLaurin out and the Falcons just playing a lot of single high looks. That's kind of Terry McLaurin's coverage that he beats best. And that is not what Deebo Samuel, Zach Ertz, these guys that are kind of left over are best at. So yes, while the stack is easy because it's so condensed, you can just go Mariota, Deebo, Ertz and call it a day. I just don't love the game environment. I don't love like the offense's overall chances of success. So I'm probably going to be mostly staying away from this one in my own lineups, but I certainly get it.
Yeah, I could see this game playing slow. Graham, I'm really interested what your thoughts are on the other side. I was a bit surprised to see ownership projections come in so hot on Drake London. He was out targeted by Darnell Mooney last week. Has not looked particularly great. I think if I am, pulling out a bring back on a Marcus Mariota lineup, it's going to be with Bijan Robinson or Mooney would probably be my preference. What do you think of the Atlanta side, and any other thoughts on this game overall?
Yeah, I'm a little more bullish on this game overall.
Okay.
Yeah, the matchup is not great for Washington. Just simply like Ryan said, Atlanta finally has a pass rush. Our guy Trey Camberling is producing this show right now, and I'm sure he's fist pumping in the air right now just watching this Falcons pass rush. But yeah, I just have way more concern about the Atlanta offense. Like Michael Penix is bottom 5 in catchable throw rate right now. I think the Falcons are the worst coached team in the NFL, and it's not close. I think Raheem Morris is certainly on the hot seat. Our guys, Ryan and I think Jacob Gibbs maybe put this out today on the Fantasy Points data account, but they're just so predictable as well, running so much pistol. That was a great note. Basically extremely run heavy when they're in pistol, extremely pass heavy when they're in shotgun, just the ultimate tell. Yeah, I want Bijan at 8,200. I think he's a phenomenal play. A really, really strong play. We've seen huge increase in the passing down work. He's got 7, 5, and 6 targets in his last 3 games. Brett Whitefield was saying on Matchup Points on Thursday that the only good plays Penix has this year is checkdowns to Bijan. And when you're struggling, why wouldn't you just keep that up? You know what I mean? I like Mariota with Deebo or Ertz. Bring it back with Bijan. I'm just going to continue to be the world's biggest Drake London hater. I think this just needs to be put into the universe because everybody has loved this guy except for me. He has 4 top 12 scoring weeks in his last 34 career games. 4. He has no ceiling and now he's got a struggling quarterback. I think Quentin Johnston outscores him again this week for the 4th straight week. Like, I don't understand how he's projecting for 19 or 20% ownership. Like, with this current state of this Falcons offense, I think Drake London's a fine NFL receiver. It's just like he's just been massively overpriced his entire career.
Yeah, if I'm chasing one of those, strong median questionable upside players this week, I'm going with Michael Pittman. I would rather have the northern version of Drake London. Only other guy that I wanted to throw out in this game is if Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt sits, Chris Rodriguez is 4,200. Jeremy McNichols will get the pass down work, but there would certainly be some upside. Maybe 15 or so touch upside for a guy like Chris Rodriguez, only 4,200. I think that is pretty interesting. I'd be really curious to see where projections would land on him Sunday morning if we get any negative news on Bill. All right, let's keep it moving. Can talk about easily the grossest game on the slate here. Tennessee Titans at the Houston Texans. Titans are 7-point dogs. Total here is just 39.5. Only major injury note in this one is that Derek Stingley is questionable with an oblique injury. Ryan, I really don't like this game. Our Cam Ward projection is laughably low here. I think we were close to 10 fantasy points this morning. I imagine Chris probably got it up closer to maybe 11 and a half. But yeah, do you have any notes on this game that can convince me to play anybody? We're certainly not game stacking it, but are there any interesting one-offs?
I have a concerning amount of notes on this game, Jake.
Oh, okay. Glad I asked you.
So, but yes, the total's awful. 5 points lower than any other game on the slate. But Titans and Texans defenses both rank as top 6 pass funnels by PROE allowed. Both of their offenses, not by pace, how we normally think of it in terms of plays per game, but seconds per play. Both of these offenses are running at the top 5 fastest in the league. So obviously neither offense has succeeded this year, but if they were to, which I think is not out of the question, again, especially with this Titans defense here, then maybe the game is enough to be kind of okay. And what this really amounts to is that Nico Collins at 7,400 is like a decent high-priced pivot off of a chalky Puka Nacua. Nico can absolutely destroy any matchup. The Titans have also been a perimeter funnel this season, top 10 in schedule adjusted to outside wide receivers. So I don't mind Nico as a one-off. Don't think I'd be going to Christian Kirk at 4,400. Did have 8 targets last week. Question the upside, obviously. And then I'm like questioning if I should even say this, but Woody Marks is 4,400.
Yes.
This Titans run defense has been horrific, specifically against man gap concepts, allowing the 4th most yards per carry, over 6 yards per carry to man gap. That is mostly what both Nick Chubb and Woody Marks have been running. It was a 60-40 split in favor of Chubb last week. Seems like they like Marks. Wouldn't be shocked if he just overtakes him or it's at least close. I would probably rather play 4,200 Chris Rodriguez if we get that, but for like the super thin Millie plays, moonshots, I think there are worse plays than Woody Marks.
Fair enough. I still don't think I've been convinced to play anybody in this game, but I do appreciate the notes, Ryan. Graham, do you have anything to add on the slate's worst game?
I wanted to come in and talk Woody Marks too. I think there's a chance he just straight up overtakes Nick Chubb this week. Snap rate has come up from 12% to 28 to 49 last week. They're not doing the Dario Ogunbowale nonsense anymore. It's just all Woody Marks on passing downs. And yeah, like Ryan noted, this is an awesome matchup. Titans have arguably the worst run defense in the league right now with no T'Vondre Sweat. You could play Woody Marks and Texans D, and like I think that makes a lot of sense in like very large fields. Like don't play this in cash. Like don't play this in single entry. It's strictly, mass multi-entry tournaments only. But yeah, I like Woody Marks a little bit for sure. I like him more than Chris Rodriguez. Like we're going to be chasing our tail with this Washington backfield all year. And if, Krosky-Merritt does sit, it's Jeremy McNichols is still going to play, man. Like he's still going to play on passing downs. He'll take a couple carries too. Cliff can't help himself. If Krosky-Merritt sits, it's probably just a big boon to Debo. Like get Debo a few more design targets. Maybe get McCary inside the red zone as well. I think Woody Marks is like legitimately a viable tournament play.
Yeah. I mean, larger field tournaments, I can see it. Like I said, I'm not sure I will be going that direction. Just really, really worried about this Houston Texans offense. 12.5 points per game. They have been very, very aggressive. But like you guys noted, the matchup is certainly right this week. Snaps have been trending up. Let's move it along to a much more interesting game. Carolina Panthers at the New England Patriots. Panthers are 5.5 point dogs here. Total is 42.5. On the injury front, Chuba Hubbard and Tet McMillan are both questionable, while Jatavion Sanders and Xavier Legette are out. On the New England side, Christian Gonzalez is questionable. Ryan, call me crazy, but I have a little bit of, large field tournament interest in a 4,900 Bryce Young here. New England, I think, right behind Dallas as the league's worst pass defense. They have looked absolutely awful this season. And, Bryce Young hasn't looked much better than the New England pass defense. But, over his last 6 games, 21.6 DraftKings fantasy points per game. We have seen some solid fantasy performances out of Bryce Young in his recent games. I don't really think I can go there if Tet sits. It's just going to be, it's going to be too thin. I don't think he's going to have anybody who can really make plays. But would you have any interest in maybe like a Bryce Young, Tet McMillan stack in some of these larger field tournaments, just given that the matchup is so good?
No, I would just way rather play Jackson Dart than Bryce Young this week. The stat I had is that, yes, while Young has put up some fantasy performances, it has largely been off of he keeps finding the end zone on the ground. He scrambled for a bunch of TDs at the end of last year, had a short one last week. He has 3 career games over 17 DraftKings points that did not involve a rushing touchdown. So to me, it's like, if that's what you're betting on, just play Jackson Dart is kind of how I'm approaching it. Yeah. I think McMillan is totally viable, assuming he suits up. Yeah, even if Christian Gonzalez plays, like I do not think this Patriots secondary just gets completely solved by him. But yeah, second most yards per game allowed on the deep ball from the Patriots. McMillan at 5,900 would so much rather play him than a chalky Drake London. I think that's like the easy, clear pivot to do. A lot more interest in this Patriots side of the game, though. Really liking the Drake May to Hunter Henry kind of single stack, where the Panthers play a ton of cover 3. We have seen Drake May mostly targeting his tight ends against cover 3 this year. Henry's top 3 in expected fantasy points per game at the position. May has been running more over the past 2 weeks, 8.5 attempts per game, almost 24 DraftKings fantasy points per game. So yeah, just May, Henry with T-Mac as the bring back is going to be by far my favorite way to play this game. I don't think you can really go to any of the other ancillary pass catchers with the Patriots just because of how spread out this target tree has been. Hunter Henry clearly kind of has the most touchdown upside and zone targets, all of that. So that's how I am approaching stacking this game, only in that way.
Yeah, certainly think that's reasonable. Drake May projecting as a really, really strong value across the industry and, especially in our stuff. Graham, anything else to add on this game?
I like Trevion Henderson quite a bit at 5,200.
Yeah.
There's a real chance they let him be the 1A this week after Ramondre is fumbled again. Antonio Gibson fumbled last week as well. Led this backfield in snaps, led it in carries last week. And you could just say, hey, like, the Panthers suck. Bryce Young is terrible. They've just lost their 2 best offensive linemen, and Austin Corbett, their center, and Rob Hunt, their guard. You can just be like, look, the Patriots are going to smash them. Play Henderson with Patriots defense. I love that quite a bit. I know I was just hyping up Woody Marks as the rookie running back to pair with Texans defense, but I mean, it's a lot easier. I think this slate is not too. It's definitely not too hard to get up to Henderson at 5,200. He's certainly a better play. I can find the 800 to get up to Henderson. Yeah, I like him quite a bit for tournaments. I think there's a legitimate ceiling here. He's got the floor with the passing down work, and then we just need him to kind of repeat what he got last week on the ground. Get the 11, 12, 13 carries, get a few dump offs. I think that makes a lot of sense this week.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I want to get out ahead of the Travion Henderson coming out party. Certainly could happen this week after Antonio Gibson and Ramondre combined for 3 fumbles last week. Only other name that I wanted to mention is with no Jatavion Sanders, Tommy Tremble should be in line for something resembling a 70 to 80% route share. He's only 2,700. He's not going to draw any ownership because the slate also has Cole Kmet, also has Brenton Strange. I mean, there are a ton of really solid options across the board at tight end, 4,500 and cheaper. So no one's really going to get to Tremble, but I do think, if you need to find the salary to, get up at wide receiver, get up at running back, paying down all the way to Tommy Tremble at 2,700 is certainly viable. All right, let's keep it moving to the 4 p.m. slate. This is a stacked 4 p.m. slate, and I do think this is going to make for a very strong late swap 4 p.m. slate. We'll start with the best game, which is the Indianapolis Colts at the Los Angeles Rams. Colts are 3.5-point dogs. Total here is 49.5. On the injury front, Alec Pierce is out for Indianapolis. On the defensive side for the Colts, Kenny Moore is out. He's their star slot corner. On the Rams side, Devontae Adams, questionable with a hamstring injury. Ryan, this is clearly the best game from a stacking perspective. I think there are a lot of really, really fun routes you can go within this game. Curious what you think of the Colts side here. I know that we're all going to love Jonathan Taylor. That's an easy one to breeze through. His workload has been awesome. He's looked incredible. The Colts offense is moving the ball. And, if you told me at the beginning of the season that the Colts were going to fight to be, I think at least by all metrics right now, a top 3, top 5 offense, we all would have been taking Jonathan Taylor with, one of the first 3 or 4 picks in our drafts. After him, though, I think it gets really interesting, especially once we start talking Colts passing attack. So a little more interested in your thoughts on like Daniel Jones and who we should pair him with.
Yeah, Taylor's a great play. Don't want to skip past him or anything, but yeah, just agreed. Taylor's awesome. Yes, Colts passing attack. I am very into basically everybody on this team right now. So we've got Daniel Jones at 5,600. He's averaging almost 24 DraftKings fantasy points per game this season. It's the best game on the slate. And if you want to play to the scenario where the Colts offense just continues to roll everybody, it's pretty easy who you stack them with. It's Michael Pittman. It's Tyler Warren. Both of those guys have a positive schematic matchup against cover 3, which the Rams have been playing more of this season. Tyler Warren actually over 4.5 yards per route run against cover 3 so far this year. That's 4th best among all wide receivers. So yeah, I think that's the clear double stack, or at least at the most basic level for this game. When you talk about the ancillary pieces for the Colts, though, it gets interesting. So Josh Downs, I do not expect him to have like a huge increase in routes. I don't really expect him to play in 12 personnel, even with Alec Pierce out. That's just not what the Colts want to do. I think they really value like their run blocking in 12, and Downs is just too small, I guess, is their problem. Don't really get it. He's super good. He's only 4,100, but interestingly, if you want to play to a scenario where the Rams kind of push the Colts more, get them more into these third down, obvious drop back situations, which they've had the second fewest of so far this year, then Downs becomes interesting because on plays that Daniel Jones has been pressured, Downs has over a 30% target share, which is absurd. And it's a selection bias thing. It's because it's third downs. It's because he's their choice routes guy. In those situations, there just haven't been as many of them this season. So I think Downs as the bring back from a Ram stack makes the most sense just because Colts are chasing points. You have the most points scored on the Ram side. They're under the most pressure there. Downs is like the way to get really contrarian in this game that you're going to need based on how popular Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams are rightfully going to be. And then the last guy that I have to mention that the chat was very curious that you had teased earlier, Jake, the best 3,100 wide receiver on this slate, it's Adonai Mitchell, baby. So I have quite the history with AD Mitchell. I'm not like that excited to be touting him right now, but look, 9 expected fantasy points per game, 18% target share in his 3 games last year where he was over a 70% route share. Would expect that this week. As I said, I don't think Josh Downs plays in 12 personnel. He didn't play a single route in 12 personnel the last time Alec Pierce missed. So AD Mitchell at 3,100 is there. He's the ass god. He can get separation. Will he drop multiple touchdowns this week again, like the last time we were jamming AD Mitchell? Potentially. But yeah, I would rather play him at 3,100 than a lot of these other guys.
Yeah, when you mentioned him potentially dropping touchdowns, I was having Dontavian Wicks flashbacks. But yeah, 3,100 for AD Mitchell, a guy who should be out there in a full-time route share, I think is pretty strong, especially given the game environment, especially given how strong the Colts offense has looked so far. Graham, curious if you have any other Colts thoughts, general thoughts on this game.
Yeah, Pittman is just way too cheap. I think he's going to be a 6K receiver by midseason. Had the one bad matchup against Pat Surtain, kind of got slowed down, but in his other two games, he's been awesome. Had 6 for 70 and 1. Last week, opened up the season hot too, with 680 and 1. Leads the team in first reads, I believe. Tyler Warren has the lead in total targets, but it's really close. Warren has 20 targets. Pittman has 19. Ryan kind of nailed it. Just stack him with Daniel Jones, Warren, and Pittman. JT is negatively correlated with Daniel Jones, so I would not do a full team stack by any means. Dude, Devontae Adams at 6,200. Like, he got back to limited practice today. Like, this is way, way too cheap for this guy. I played him last week. I played him the week before at 5,900. Like, I'm just going to keep going, jamming him in until he's 7K where he should be. The role is just awesome. Like, yeah, Puka is the best receiver play on the slate, but I think Devontae Adams is very clearly the best value on this slate. Wide receiver 6 in targets per game, wide receiver 3 in expected fantasy points. And like I said, got back to limited practice today. I think they're just taking it easy on him because they got to turn around and play on Thursday night this coming week in week 5. So they just, giving them the week off. It's an awesome matchup. Like, these Colts corners, they just sit back and play zone. They can't play man, so this is looking like a Devontae Adams week to me.
Yeah, I mean, both of these Rams wide receivers are shaping up as fantastic plays. We've got an 18-point projection on a $6,200 Devontae Adams, a 25-point projection on a 7,900 Puka Nacua. I mean, those are absolutely massive numbers.
I mean, Puka's going to be 30%. I think Adams should arguably be 30% too. I think the injuries, if he gets the all clear, like we get a Schefter tweet Saturday night or whatever, he'll probably push up to 25%. Right now, I'm seeing like 18, 19, 20 across the industry. That's still too low for him.
Yeah, and while I do think Adams plays, if he sits, I legitimately think you could justify a 30-point projection for Puka Nacua. I mean, it would be, and he's going to be 50% owned in that situation. Again, I think Adams plays, so we probably don't need to entertain that much. But if we don't hear anything, it would certainly be interesting to jam a lot of Puka Nacua and then get the news that Devontae Adams is sitting. That would give you a ton of great equity in that late slate. Only other guy that I wanted to mention here on the Rams side is Matthew Stafford. Like, he doesn't project great on his own, but this is, another week where Adams and Nacua are both projecting as extreme values. And, if these guys combine for 70, 75 DraftKings points, I think you're really going to want Stafford because that almost definitely means he hits the bonus, almost definitely means he throws 3 or 4 touchdowns. And this is a great game environment. So I don't want to totally forget about Matthew Stafford here as much as I want to play Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams. Before we move on from this game, Ryan, I'm curious if you had any thoughts on Kyren Williams. I feel like this is more of a shootout game. Everyone wants to lean more into the pass games and the Jonathan Taylor side of things. But, the Rams are favored by 3.5 here. And when Kyren Williams has his big games, it tends to be in these Rams wins.
Yeah, he's awesome leverage on like this entire game. That's not going to be my preferred way to play it. I do think like easily the best thing you can be doing in this game is Stafford, Puka, Adams, set it and forget it with the Josh Downs bring back. But yeah, Kyron's at least interesting just because he's so game script sensitive. Over 20 fantasy points per game in wins since the start of 2023. 55% boost to his fantasy points per snap when the Rams are leading. And it's just because Sean McVay loves feeding him, loves controlling the clock when they're leading, when they're able to do that. I think the Colts are probably good enough to where at least their offense pressures them to turn this more shootout. But yeah, there are versions of this game where it's kind of more of a grinded out type of thing. Colts have allowed the 6th most adjusted yards before contact per attempt, so they've been a little bit weak on the ground as well. So I don't hate it. I will be honest. Yeah, I think Kyren is pretty strong in lineups just where you're stacking another game and you want to say, okay, I would like to get all the leverage on all of that ownership from Puka, from Adams. I think it's pretty decent.
Yeah, I do think that is one of the more interesting angles in this game. But I mean, there are a ton of really fun ways that you can play this, and a decent number of players that are between Stafford, Daniel Jones, even Josh Downs, who are projecting for not a ton of ownership. So certainly some ways you can play this that are pretty unique, even with Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua projecting to be mega chalk. And I think Jonathan Taylor ends up getting up there too once we see some Sunday morning ownership adjustments. Let's move it on. Jacksonville Jaguars at the San Francisco 49ers. Jags are 3-point underdogs here. Total is 46.5. On the injury front, Daimi Brown is questionable with a shoulder injury. He logged a pair of limited practices on Thursday and Friday. On the 49ers side, Brock Purdy is back, while Ricky Pearsall and Juwan Jennings are both listed as questionable. Pearsall looks more likely to play. He had a pair of limited practices later this week. Juwan Jennings, only 1 limited practice on Friday. That's more than he did last week. Certainly need to keep an eye on both players as we head into Sunday. Graham, I feel like the Jags side of this game is very, very straightforward. If Daimi Brown sits, I certainly have some interest in Parker Washington. Beyond that, it's really just Brenton Strange for me. Do you have anything to add on the Jags?
Yeah, no, Brenton Strange is a really strong play. I think I said Juwan Johnson's the best tight end play on the slate. I loved Ryan's note on Sam Laporta. I love Tyler Warren. I don't think we spent enough time talking like how good of a play Tyler Warren is. Like he's way too cheap.
Yeah,
leads all tight ends and yards per game. I think Brenton Strange is probably my second favorite tight end on this slate. Like he's a full-time player, leads the Jags in receiving, 137 yards. And the 49ers haven't been as good against tight ends this year. They gave up 5 catches, 49 yards, and a touchdown to Juwan. They gave up 5 catches, 43, and a touchdown to Trey McBride last week. And Travis Hunter is not a full-time receiver yet. BTJ is struggling. Trevor Lawrence is struggling. I think Brenton Strange is a really strong play. I love Brock Purdy this week, and I love pairing him with Ricky Pearsall. Pearsall, over his last 5 games, going back to the last 2 in 2024, he has 30 catches, 491 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He's basically like a borderline wide receiver 1 for fantasy, and he's priced as like a decent wide receiver 2, like high-end wide receiver 3. 5,700. He is, like you said, questionable. He has the knee injury. Juwan Jennings just got back to limited practice today. So if Jennings is able to go dealing with 2 injuries, he might be a little more limited. I don't know if that really matters all that much for Pearsall, just because he has been he's been their downfield threat. He's been their over the middle threat. And again, he's just 5,700. Another guy I think that outscores Drake London this week. Purdy Pearsall makes a ton of sense. I don't know if you have to bring it back with the Jags. Just say, hey, like Purdy is top 8 in all quarterback efficiency metrics since the start of 2023. Like he could have a 302 touchdown, 3 touchdown game. But if you do want to bring it back, it would be Brenton Strange.
Yeah, it would be. And like I said, if we can get any news, especially before the 1 p.m. slate locks on Daimi Brown, if he's out, I would have a lot of interest in a 3,700 Parker Washington. Parker Washington has he actually ranks top 5 among all players in targets per route run. A lot of positive coach speak about him too. Liam Cohen said not going to increase the Travis Hunter role, as frustrating as that is. If Daimi Brown is out, they really like Parker Washington. So that injury is going to be key for Parker Washington's value. And yeah, Graham, really want to echo what you said. I think Purdy's just really easy to stack. This is just another hyper concentrated offense between Christian McCaffrey, Ricky Pearsall, and then, of course, Juwan Jennings, if he's able to go. But, he's a little bit more beat up than those other players. Ryan, wanted to give you a second to talk. Were you going to say anything, Graham?
No, I was just going to say, if you're stacking Purdy too, like most quarterbacks and running backs are not positively correlated, but McCaffrey and Purdy are. Like you could definitely do a full-on 49ers stack and just – they could put 31, 35 on the Jags.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this like I have Christian McCaffrey in the bell cow report here on my other monitor. 28% target share for Christian
Yeah.
McCaffrey. I did the I did the first run of the 49ers projections this week for fantasy points, and when I saw Christian McCaffrey came out to 60 projected receiving yards, I thought I had a typo in there. I thought I made a mistake. No, like the data totally backs that up. Christian McCaffrey is dominating as a receiver. He's definitely pacing for another thousand rushing and receiving yard season. Ryan, anything to add on Christian McCaffrey this game in general? Because McCaffrey is going to be mega chalk at running back. He's priced up to 8,500, but I mean, geez, it seems warranted when he's averaging 28.3 expected fantasy points per game. This workload has been incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to continue to be over the field on Christian McCaffrey until he is well over 9,000. In a world where touchdowns are worth 0 fantasy points, McCaffrey would still be averaging over 21 fantasy points per game, which is just absurd. That would be like 50% more than the RB6. His red zone role hasn't really hit yet for rushing touchdowns, but leads all running backs in red zone expected fantasy points per game as well. Yeah, he's just an awesome play. I want to get up to as much of him as I possibly can. And other than that, I think you guys covered the game pretty well. I just wanted to give like another +1 to Brock Purdy stacks. I think this is a sneaky, really fun and really good game environment. I mean, both of these offenses are top 8 by pass rate over expectation. They're both top 10 in pace, both top 4 in during snap motion rate, kind of just like when we saw the 49ers play the Saints a couple weeks back. It's just two genius play callers that should be completely in their bags. They both actually have their starting quarterbacks in this game too, unlike that 49ers Saints game. Very condensed, super easy, assuming Jawan Jennings is out, to just go Purdy, Pearsall, CMC. If Jennings plays, he's priced at $5K. I would even have some interest there. Played hurt in week 2, a full game, his only full game of the season, 19.9 fantasy points, pretty solid. Yeah, I just like basically everything about this game, and it's going very underrated, under the radar, I think, just by industry ownership right now.
Yeah. Purdy, I think, would be a pretty interesting late swap option overall if you're chasing and you end up playing into, maybe the Colts game or the Bears game. Those are games that are going to catch a lot more ownership in the 4 p.m. slate. So certainly like that angle. And I do think, you don't need to bring back on the Jag side, but pretty easy to go with Brenton Strange or a little bit of Parker Washington if Diami Brown sits. All right, let's move it on to Baltimore Ravens at the Kansas City Chiefs. Ravens are 2.5-point favorites here. Total is 48.5. On the injury front, Isaiah Likely is questionable. He did log a full practice on Friday. I think he likely returns. No pun intended there. On the Kansas City side, Xavier Worthy practiced in full all week. He will be playing in this one. Ryan, curious on your thoughts on Lamar Jackson. I think he's a bit of a similar play to Josh Allen this week, where you're just getting a very, very different build if you end up paying up at quarterback. And, I don't think anyone would have expected it at this point in the season, but one of these teams is going to end up 1-3 after this game. And, I'm certainly not one to go down narrative street, but it does make me wonder a little bit if we see Lamar or even Patrick Mahomes try to take over this game a little bit more than they normally would. Plus Chiefs run defense has been solid. I imagine the ball ends up in Lamar's hands quite a bit here. What are your thoughts on the Ravens side of this game?
Yeah, I think I prefer Josh Allen to either of these QBs, but it is interesting, right? Like it's a game total where I feel like in years past you would get like, okay, Chiefs Ravens 44.5 game total. It's 48.5. Both these defenses have struggled. Lamar is absolutely balling. He averages 29 DraftKings fantasy points per game against the Chiefs in his career. I kind of like it. I will say, though, in terms of who you're stacking him with, you might want to say, oh, easily Zay Flowers. Of course, he has massive spike week potential. DFS cheat code is always either hitting a ceiling game or doing little to nothing. And that's fair. But from a schematic perspective, Rashad Bateman actually really pops here, just because the Chiefs always play among the most too high looks in the NFL. And Bateman and Zay Flowers, more than almost any other wide receiver 1 and 2 pairing in the NFL, have very sharp splits between single high and 2 high. Even so, this season so far, Bateman actually leads the Ravens in target share against 2 high with 25%, 69% higher yards per out run against 2 high since the start of last year. Zay Flowers the complete opposite, so a tougher matchup for him. I think you could double and play them both with Lamar. You could throw in one of the tight ends. Yeah, I think all of that is pretty interesting. The only guy I really want to shout out on the Chiefs side is Tyquan Thornton at 4K. This is also, it's partly he's easily been the Chiefs' best receiver over the last few weeks. It sounds like they really like him. They want to keep him on the field. We got a report that they are excited about him running routes alongside Xavier Worthy, who's likely to play here. So I think Thornton's like deep field stretcher role isn't going away. And also the Ravens have been the most vulnerable to getting beaten deep on man coverage this year. And that's exactly what Thornton has been doing. He's top 5 in air yardage share, leads the league in air yards versus man coverage, over 3 yards per out run against man coverage this season. All of these are very small samples, and Tyquan Thornton was a meme player that I personally hated as a Patriots fan for years. But at 4K with likely nobody playing him, I think he's kind of decent, even not just as a bring back, like just as a one-off. There's like a lot of 4,000-ish options on this slate. Maybe he's not better than some of these tight ends we've talked about, but I do think the upside is there for Thornton to hit some splash plays.
Yeah, Thornton's really interesting. I was highly skeptical early in the week, but I have come around a little bit more. I mean, leads the league in deep targets, second in air yards. He's really been their only effective offensive weapon at this point in the season. So he's a little bit interesting at 4K, and I kind of think he's played a bit too well for them to take him off the field. Very difficult to project this wide receiver rotation with Xavier Worthy back in the fold here. Graham, really curious what your thoughts are on this game. This is a really interesting one. Yeah, what do you think?
So the big dog is 7,200. He's usually like 8K. They're favored. Yeah, it's against a good run defense. Chiefs are very good, but like this is Derrick Henry as a favorite, and no one's going to want to play him. And he's a little too cheap. Like Henry has gone over, how many times has he gone over 25 DK points as a Raven? Like 9 times. He did it in week 1. I think he did it 8 times last year, 7 times maybe. Like huge ceiling. No one's on him. Literally no one. And he's kind of a similar play to James Cook in a way. Like, yeah, the Bills are way bigger favorites. It's a much weaker opponent, much weaker defense, but like you kind of need them to score touchdowns for them to really hit. Henry is a little less involved in the passing game, obviously, than Cook is, but like I see a huge ceiling at like no ownership with Henry. And the way I'd want to play it in this game specifically is like stack with Mahomes. I loved Ryan's take on Tyquan Thornton. I think he's certainly in play in Mahomes stacks, but you could double him with Xavier Worthy. George Kittle, Dalvin Cook, T. Higgins, all of those guys have played in the past with torn labrums, played with harnesses, and they played well. Worthy's just overpriced though, man. He's 5,800. He could certainly have a limited role, but I mean, they desperately need, like kind of that short area design target guy in this offense, just kind of move the chains. And then, yeah, he can get deep. I still think, like Ryan said, it'll be Tyquan Thornton being their deep threat. But definitely contrarian like tournament stack for this game is Mahomes with Henry plus at least one of his 2 pass catchers, probably 2 of his pass catchers. I saw this quote from Mahomes 2 weeks ago, maybe. He was basically saying like, I still think he's their leading rusher. Or maybe it's Kareem Hunt. He was basically saying like, yeah, I run more in the playoffs. I usually just kind of save it for the playoffs. But like, bro, this is a playoff game for the Chiefs. Like you're saying, they could be 1-3. So I think there's some sneaky like scrambling upside with Mahomes as well. He had 57 yards on the ground week 1 and a touchdown. He had 66 yards and a touchdown week 2. Didn't need to do anything on the ground last week to beat the Giants, but this is certainly a spot where I could see him taking off a few more times. And again, just 6K from Mahomes. I have not really been interested in Patrick Mahomes in DFS for like 2 years just because the ceiling hasn't been there and he's always been overpriced. But this is like maybe the first time I've been kind of interested back in for stacks.
Yeah, I do think this is a very, very interesting game environment to stack up. And honestly, I think this is, along with the San Francisco side of this 4 p.m. slate, probably the best spot to late swap to if you end up chasing here. You're going to get Mahomes at pretty minimal ownership. His stacking partners are, pretty much everyone's projecting for single digits here. This is just not going to be a very popular game. All right, guys, let's wrap it up with the Chicago Bears at the Las Vegas Raiders. Bears are 1.5 underdogs here. Total is 47.5. On the injury front, DeAndre Swift and Colston Loveland both listed as questionable this week. On the Raiders side, Michael Mayer is out with a concussion. Ryan, I'll start with you. What do you think of the Bears side of this game? Caleb Williams, you watched the film. He's still leaving plenty on the table, but the fantasy results have been there under Ben Johnson, and obviously this offense looks a lot better. What are your thoughts on the Bears side here?
Yeah, I would just really like this Bears offense, and I want to buy into it for this week. The Raiders lead the NFL in cover 3 rate right now. Pete Carroll's Seahawks in 2023 were also top 3 in cover 3 rate. Seems to be just a recent tendency of his. And Ben Johnson is arguably the best cover 3 beater in the NFL. That shows up in Caleb's stats. He's top 5 in passer rating against cover 3 right now. Even if you take out the game against the Cowboys, he is still about 5th best in passer rating versus cover 3, compared to like 10th worst on all other shells. So yeah, I think this is just the perfect defense for this Bears offense to take apart, like regardless of whether Caleb Williams messes it up in places. I think Johnson can kind of do his thing here. And the way that he's done it in the past and this year is just by upping the target rate to the slot and to the inline players. So the target shares to those two alignments just skyrockets when the Bears face cover 3. That outside target share comes way down. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't play Rome Odunze, because the raw volume is amazing, 4th among all wide receivers in expected fantasy points per game, 4 end zone targets to everybody else's 1 on this team. Like, clearly, if you're playing Caleb, you're playing Rome. But for the secondary stack, we have a couple interesting options here just based on that slot inline kind of cheat code with Ben Johnson against cover 3. If Colston Loveland's out, I am very interested in a 3K Cole Kmet. He has awesome career splits against cover 3 as well. Perfect little spot for him. Even Olamide Zaccheaus at 3,600. Yeah, it was Luther Burden that scored on the long play last week, but Zaccheaus easily leads the team in slot plus inline targets this year with 14. Leads the team in targets per route run against cover 3, almost 33%. So I think pretty much everybody here outside of DJ Moore is someone I at least have some level of interest in this Bears passing game. And I'm a little surprised that just based on how the Raiders defense has performed, maybe not quite as badly as the Bears, but they've been the 2nd biggest pass funnel by PRO allowed. They've been very beatable. So I really prefer the Bears side of this game, especially at ownership, but even straight up, I would just rather be stacking Caleb and these pieces than the Raiders side.
Yeah, I mean, but Ryan, for what it's worth, the Bears side has been, or at least the Bears defense has been very exploitable as well. Highest fantasy points per dropback allowed in the NFL from the Chicago Bears so far. So, Graham, curious, any interest in Geno Smith or the Raiders side of this game? Because I really think you can go both directions here. This is a great game to stack. To me, it reads a lot like the Colts-Rams game where, just a lot of fun angles in this one.
Yeah, I like Geno quite a bit. Projected ownership has him as the chalkiest quarterback on the slate, which I think you can kind of get away from. There's a lot of really good quarterbacks on the slate, but 5,400 is too cheap for him. Like you noted, Bears are right there with the Cowboys as the worst defense in the NFL. No Jalen Johnson. Kyler Gordon still hurt their inside corner. I just question the upside with Geno. Like, he's had some massive games, but it was last week was all in garbage time. I mean, it's just like his pass catchers are okay too. Like Bowers, I think he's less than 100%. Like, I don't know if I want to pay up for 5,800 Bowers, getting the full-time role, but like he does not look as nearly explosive I was talking to Brett about it, and Brett said kind of the same thing. His get off the line of scrimmage is just like not there right now. Jacoby Myers is 5,400, but he's kind of always been like a floor play, not necessarily a ceiling play. I mean, he's certainly a good stacking partner, and I know it feels a little like point chasey with Trey Tucker, but I think he actually might be my favorite stacking partner with Geno. At least by first read target share, it's very close. Jacoby Myers is at 28%. Trey Tucker is at 25%, actually ahead of Bowers. So yeah, I mean, the dude coming off a 40-point game, like he's going to regress. There's no doubt about it. But 8-9 targets his last 2 games. Geno Smith said in the preseason that he reminded him of Santana Moss, like he is just like legitimately breaking out as a third-year receiver. And I think everybody's going to kind of want to turn their nose up at last week and just say, it was garbage time against Washington, like whatever. But like, if there were a spot for him to come back and have another great game, it would be here. I mean, the Bears are so bad. He's a full-time player. I think Geno and Tucker makes a lot of sense. Jacoby Myers is projecting for the second most ownership among receivers on this slate by far. Like Puka's number 1. Jacoby's projecting for 25%. I think Trey Tucker will probably top out at 15%. So that would be my Geno Tucker way to get into this game.
Yeah, I do. I have come around to the Trey Tucker angle too. I was kind of with you, Graham, where I was like, feels a little point chasey, but man, the role's really good. And what was it last year? Juwan Jennings dropped 40 points, and then he was massive chalk the following week. We're not going to get that with Tucker, even though people really like this game and they really like the Geno Smith side of things. Ryan, curious if you have anything to add on the Raiders before we get out of here.
Yeah, I mean, Bears have just been very vulnerable specifically to the slot. Looks like they're going to be without Kyler Gordon again, so that's great for Jacoby. But they've also been vulnerable deep, which is great for Trey Tucker. So, yeah, I kind of like getting off of Myers and on to Tucker just from an ownership perspective, plus an upside perspective. Yeah, I think we covered it pretty well. Like maybe the only other thing I want to mention in this game really quick is I think Ashton Genty is legitimately in play again at 6,200. Basically, he has gotten the fewest yards before contact per attempt in the NFL this year, or bottom 5, excuse me. 2 of his previous 3 opponents were top 6 toughest matchups by yards before contact per attempt allowed. The Bears have allowed by far the most adjusted yards before contact per attempt on the ground. So if there were, I said this last week too, which I'm realizing, but if there were a good get right spot for Ashton Genty, it could be here. Interesting leverage on all the ownership elsewhere in this game. I don't think he's like a top 5 running back play on the slate, but he's probably just below that for me.
Yeah, a little comparable to Kyron Williams, I think, in some senses in this game where, if the Raiders are able to pull off the win here, and they are favored, we could finally see a solid game from Ashton Genty. I don't think I have anything else to add on this one. I probably do like Brock Bowers a bit more than Graham does. I am just a little surprised to see Bowers projecting to be so popular. It does scare me given how beat up he's been early in the season. But yeah, I think we covered this game pretty well. This is a really fun slate. Again, I think late swap's going to be really key for this 4 p.m. slate if you're chasing getting off some of these more popular 4 p.m. games in favor of maybe the Ravens game or the 49ers side of that contest. But that'll do it for week 4 cashing points. Really appreciate everybody for tuning in, and we will see you all at the top of the leaderboards.
What? Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.